All right, let's talk about Superman. I know, you think you know him, but what if I told you he's more than just a superhero? He's a massive philosophical puzzle, and the whole thing kicks off with this one single, deceptively simple question.
So really let that sink in for a second. If you could fix everything, should you? Are you obligated to? This isn't just some comic book thought bubble. It's the absolute core conflict that drives Superman's entire existence. I mean, what do you owe everybody else when you can do, well, pretty much anything?
Yeah, for more than 80 years, this one guy has basically been a living, breathing thought experiment for that exact question. He's not just some dude in a cape punching bad guys. Nope. Think of him more like a philosophical sandbox. His stories are where we get to play around with these huge ideas about ethics, about burden, and, the crazy complicated mess that comes with having godlike power.
So, to really get Superman, we've got to start with the sheer weight of what he can do. And I'm not talking about lifting cars or buildings. It's the moral weight, the crushing responsibility that comes with wearing that cape.
Okay, so there's this big idea in philosophy, right? It's called ought implies can. Sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. It just means you can only be morally on the hook to do something if you're actually able to do it. I'm not obligated to stop a hurricane because, duh, I can't. But Superman? What happens when your can is basically limitless?
And this is where things get really tricky. For you and me, our moral to-do list is manageable. But for Superman, does having limitless ability mean he has a limitless obligation? I mean, think about it. Does he have a duty to stop every single crime, every injustice, everywhere, all at the same time? That question mark at the end there is doing some serious heavy lifting.
The philosopher Peter Singer came up with this really powerful idea. He says, look, if you're walking past a shallow pond and see a kid drowning, you have to wade in and save them. Getting your pants muddy is nothing compared to a child's life. Simple, right? But for Superman, the entire planet is that shallow pond. With his powers, he can hear every cry for help. He knows about every drowning child everywhere. So for him, not acting even for a second, that has a kind of moral weight we can barely imagine. Okay, so if you're facing this, just infinite level of responsibility, how in the world do you choose what to do? Well, that brings us to his moral compass. And it's basically being pulled in two totally different directions. On one hand, you've got deontology. That's a fancy word for morality is all about sticking to the rules. And on the other hand, you have consequentialism, which says, nope, all that matters is the final outcome. And pretty much every single version of Superman you've ever seen lands somewhere between these two poles. So, deontology. The idea here is that some things are just flat out wrong, period. It doesn't matter if doing them leads to a good result, the action itself is what counts. For the classic, traditional Superman, this is everything. It's his whole deal. And it all comes down to one single famous rule. You know what I'm talking about, the no-kill rule. It is an absolute. There's this great story where he goes up against this team called the Elite, and their whole motto is basically, kill the bad guys, problem solved. But Superman completely rejects that. He shows them that real strength isn't just punching harder, it's having the restraint not to take a life, even when it would be so much easier. For him, the rule is the whole point. It's what makes him a hero, not just a weapon. But then you've got consequentialism, and this completely flips the script. It says, hey, forget the rules for a second. The only thing that really matters is the end result. If doing something, well, something bad, leads to a good outcome, then it might just be the right thing to do. It's all about achieving the greater good. And if you want to see how that can go wrong, look no further than the Injustice storyline. It is a terrifying deep dive into this exact idea. A horrible tragedy pushes Superman over the edge, and he just throws his no-kill rule out the window. He decides the only way to guarantee a safe world is to kill his enemies and basically rule the planet with an iron fist. In his mind, the result, a world without crime, justifies him becoming a tyrant. It's a really dark path. And that dark path, it has a name. It's called the paternalism trap. And it's that dangerous place where the line between saving people and controlling them just completely vanishes. See, paternalism always starts from a good place.
It's that whole, I'm only doing this for your own good vibe. But man, is it a slippery slope. Because it's built on the idea that one person, or one super person, knows what's best for literally everyone else, and it gives them the excuse to take away your freedom, all in the name of keeping you safe.
This is the classic slippery slope from hero to villain, and the injustice story lays it out perfectly. It all starts with a tragedy, which creates this desperate need for order. To get that order, the hero starts taking benevolent control, but that control just gets tighter and tighter until it becomes straight-up tyranny. The protector has become the dictator.
So this leads us to a final, really interesting idea, a different path. What if real strength isn't about always stepping in to fix things? What if it's about knowing when to step back and let humanity figure things out on its own?
This is sometimes called the prime directive problem. Yeah, we're borrowing that from Star Trek. But think about it. If you have this godlike figure who swoops in and solves every single major problem, does humanity ever learn to stand on its own 2 feet? Does being saved over and over and over again just create a world that's totally dependent?
The brilliant story Kingdom Come nails this whole conflict. First, Superman retires and everything falls into chaos. So, okay, total non-interference doesn't work. But then he comes back and tries to force order on everyone, becoming an authoritarian himself. And that fails spectacularly too. The real breakthrough comes at the end. He finally learns that the answer isn't one extreme or the other. It's balance. He has to become a mentor, not a master, to guide humanity, not to rule it.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? What does Superman actually teach us? Well, first, that power massively expands your moral responsibility. Second, that being good is this constant, messy tug-of-war between sticking to your principles and getting the best results. Third, that the road from helping to controlling is dangerously short. That's the paternalism trap. And finally, maybe the biggest lesson of all, that true strength, true power, often means choosing to show restraint and letting others grow.
In the end, Superman is really just a giant mirror. He makes us look at ourselves and ask, what would I do with that kind of power? Because power, and I don't mean super strength, I mean the influence we all have in our own lives, it doesn't just test our abilities. It reveals our character. It shows who we really are. So what does your power reveal about you?